If you're running an e-commerce brand in Australia or New Zealand right now, I would bet anything that you've been having one of two conversations lately. Either it's quiet, said we're that kind of particular brand of founder panic, or what sale should we run next? Said with that kind of weary resignation of someone who already knows it probably won't work this time either. Maybe both, maybe in the same week, maybe even in the same afternoon. And look, I get it. I'm running businesses too, and I talk to our clients every day, and I read the same headlines in the news and on social media as you do. There's data coming out of the ABS, NAB, and Australia Post over the last few weeks and months, and it paints a properly grim picture. I mean, we're all living it anyway, high cost of living pressure, the highest in over a decade, apparently. Retail insolvencies more than doubled in the last 2 years. Nearly 60% of shoppers are now deferring purchases until there's a sale. I mean, you'd have to be willfully ignoring the news to think things are easy out there right now. But here's the thing that I really want to put on the table today, because it has been bothering me a little bit for the last few weeks. Our clients at Productpreneur, and I mean effectively all of them, are not having those conversations, either of them. And they're not really saying it's quiet because it isn't for them. They're up across the board year on year. Some of them significantly up, in fact. And they're not saying what sales should we run next because they're not running many sales. I mean, a few here and there at strategic moments, but nothing like the volume or the depth of discounting that most of their competitors are running. And so, on today's podcast episode, I really want to talk about what's actually going on here, because either our clients have somehow been blessed by the retail gods, which is unlikely, or there's something very specific happening in the Australian market right now that a lot of brands are just missing or getting wrong, and a small handful are getting right. And once you see this, you won't be able to unsee it. So we are, of course, here on the Brand Marketing Show. I'm the host, Kath Langman. Let's get straight into it today. Now, first, I want to start by setting the scene properly, because if I'm going to claim that our clients are doing something counterintuitive, then I think you really need to know what the actual weather is like out there that they're going against. So the NAB Q1 2026 Consumer Sentiment Survey came out a few weeks ago. It is a bit of a sobering read. Australian households are facing the highest cost of living pressure in over a decade. 57% of Australians have switched at least one provider in the past year, chasing better prices. And NAB's economists, this is National Australia Bank for those of you who aren't in Australia and familiar with acronyms like that. NAB's economists are warning that consumers are shifting, and I'm quoting here, from selective cutbacks in discretionary spending to broad-based restraint that now includes essential items, which in plain English just means it's not just that people are skipping the occasional treat, people are genuinely cutting back on things they actually need. And that is a significant shift for sure in consumer behavior. And it's the real thing that all brands are operating against in the market right now. Then there's the discount weighting data, which is the one that should really be keeping retail founders up at night. Australia Post's 2026 e-commerce report tells us that 58% of Australians now defer their purchases until a sale or a special deal comes up, and that's up from 50% in 2023. Separate research from Monash University's Australian Consumer and Retail Studies found that 52% of shoppers are now deferring purchases indefinitely. They're just waiting, holding off, and not spending. ASIC, the Australian Securities and Investment Commission, data shows that retail insolvencies have more than doubled in the past 2 years. We work with brand owners and we work with retailers as well. So two sides of that business relationship. And a lot of the brands that we have spoken to have, been experiencing the impact of some of their retail stockists going under. So, it's a it's a tough situation out there. Previously Catch of the Day, that was wound down. My Deal got absorbed into Woolworths. Oz Sale closed briefly. Cheapest Chips got acquired. Accent Group has been closing chains. I mean, this is a sector that is under genuine structural pressure. I even read in the news, just the business news a couple of days ago, that Nike um, has been trying to make a strategic pivot away from selling through retail stores into just focusing on direct to consumer sales on their own e-commerce website. And that's actually kind of tanked their sales. I mean, everything's just shifted so dramatically. But here's where it gets really interesting, because I don't want you thinking that this episode is about pretending that everything is all sunshine, because clearly it isn't. This pressure is real. But what I want to explore today is that in the face of all of this, there are two very different strategic responses that a brand can take. And the one most Australian brands are taking, in my observation, is the one that feels logical. It feels like it's working and it feels like the only option. And unfortunately, it's the one that's actually deepening the problem. So what is the herd doing? I mean, really, exactly what you would expect when everyone's scared. More sales with deeper discounts, tighter promotional calendars. The default e-commerce brand playbook, marketing playbook in Australia now looks a little bit like this: 4 to 6 major site-wide discount campaigns a year, end of financial year, Black Friday, Christmas, after paydays, plus Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's, Click Frenzy Mayhem, Easter, Australia Day, Boxing Day, any and all of those that might be applicable to the kind of product category that you're in. It's really a rolling calendar of reasons to discount. And if you're paying attention to your own email inbox right now, you're already seeing it and you're probably already contributing to it. I saw a post-Christmas clearance headline a couple of months ago where Kmart was selling items at 50 cents. And look, Kmart has a very specific market position and they can play that game. But then I watched so-called premium Shopify brands that have spent years building a beautiful, beautiful brand, targeting considered values-driven shoppers, starting to run 40%, 50%, 60% off site-wide. Saw another one just a couple of weeks ago doing the same thing, and they've done it frequently in the last couple of years. And I think you're not Kmart. You're not supposed to be playing Kmart's game. You were never going to win Kmart's game. But, in all honesty, I get it because it feels like the rational move. A sale works, short term, it lifts revenue. You see the spike in your Shopify dashboard and you feel the relief. Your week doesn't look as bad anymore and your accountant doesn't flinch at the monthly check-in. And in the moment of real commercial pressure, of course, the founder reaches for the lever that gives them the immediate relief. And I'd be a liar if I said that I couldn't understand that impulse. The problem is what it costs long term and not even super long term. And it's a cost that's not going to show up on your analytics dashboard. Let me give you a striking data point that is worth sitting with. Shopify, the platform here, not an e-commerce brand, the actual Shopify website platform that all of these stores are running on, in their winter 2026 edition update, explicitly moved away from promoting site-wide percentage off discounts at the platform level. Their own commentary was, and I am paraphrasing a bit here, that site-wide percentage off sales drove short-term volume but quietly damaged profitability. Shopify's platform team, looking at the data across millions of merchants, decided that the industry default was quietly hurting the businesses on their platform enough that they needed to change the defaults to nudge merchants away from it, which I think is a very loud signal from a platform that would otherwise benefit from more transactions, considering they earn fees every time a transaction is made. Now, here's the piece I really want you to hear today because I think it's the most underappreciated dynamic in the Australian e-commerce market right now. And I don't think this is actually unique to Australia, particularly as I'm about to quote some stats from some international data experts. So in January, a gentleman called Tom Burke from a US retail data firm called AtData gave an interview for a 2026 Retail Outlook piece, and he said something that I have been quoting frequently since I read it. And he said, cost-conscious shoppers will chase price. Brand-committed shoppers will expect hyper-personalized experiences that justify the premium. But retailers stuck in the middle will lose both groups. It just strikes me every time I read that or say it out loud. So I'm just going to repeat that last bit because I really want you to have it sink in for you as well. Retailers stuck in the middle are going to lose both groups. And this is, I think, is the real story. The Australian economy isn't the only culprit here killing premium brands. The middle ground mimicry is killing premium brands. Because here's what's happening. Premium brands are panicking at the cost of living numbers, looking around, seeing everyone discounting and thinking we have to do the same or we will be left behind. So they start running more frequent and deeper site-wide sales. They start slashing prices. They start running the same promotional calendar as a discount retailer. And when they do that, two things happen at once, and both of them are bad. First, they tell their brand committed customer, the customer who was buying them because of the brand, or because of the values, or because of the beautiful thing that they've built, they tell that customer, we're actually just a commodity. Look, we're the same as everyone else. We're on sale. That customer, the one who was happy paying full price or close to full price, starts to waver. Because if the brand is treating itself like a commodity, why should she treat it any differently? Second, they are absolutely categorically not going to win the price-conscious shopper because that shopper is going to places like Kmart, she's going to places like Amazon, she's going to places like Temu. The price-conscious shopper has options that scale down to prices that a beautiful boutique premium e-commerce brand cannot match and shouldn't want to match. So you've alienated your brand committed buyer and you've still failed to capture the price conscious one. You've ended up squarely in the middle. And as Tom Burke says, the middle loses both groups. It is genuinely the worst of both worlds. Deloitte's 2026 Retail Industry Global Outlook puts actual numbers on this. Their research finds that up to 40% of a brand's perceived value is driven by factors other than price. Those things would be things like customer service, quality, experience, trust, identity. These are where premium brands should be competing, not on price, where they will always lose. And here's the stat that really makes it land for me. Kobe Marketing, who do a lot of loyalty research in the US, described discounting as, and this is another direct quote, a habit that's hard to break. eMarketer reported earlier this year that genuine customer loyalty, the percentage of consumers who say they are truly committed to a brand, dropped from 34% to 29% between 2024 and 2025. So loyalty is fragmenting everywhere. The brands that are holding it, not the ones competing on price. The ones who are connecting with their customers on things like identity and on values and on the thing that the brand actually means to that person. That's the piece most brands are missing. All right, so here's the part that I find genuinely fascinating, and it's something that I have been talking about on the show for a little while, but the data coming out this year is really proving the theory in real time. In a tough economy, you would expect all consumers to behave roughly the same way. Cut back, tighten up, chase value. And the price conscious shopper absolutely does do that. The data is absolutely unambiguous. She's cutting back, she's switching providers, she's deferring purchases, and she's waiting for sales. But the values driven, identity led premium buyer, which is the kind of buyer that a really well positioned premium brand attracts, doesn't do that, or at least not in the same way. Something counterintuitive happens instead. In uncertain times, identity markers become more important, not less. When everything feels chaotic, the things that anchor who you are, which include brands you choose, the products you use, the experiences that feel like you, actually become more meaningful, not less. Your morning routine stays, your favorite skincare stays, the kids' lunch accessories that you bought because it matched your family's values for healthy outdoor lifestyle stays. If anything, you lean more into the brands that make you feel like yourself because so many other things around you feel destabilized or destabilizing. And I think this is a bit that a lot of brands miss. People assume a premium buyer in a cost of living crisis will act like a budget shopper, but she doesn't. She behaves like a premium buyer under more pressure, which means she becomes more discerning about where she spends and not less willing to spend necessarily. She might spend on fewer brands, she probably will, but she spends more on the ones she actually cares about. And crucially, she's looking for a brand to hold its ground because the brand is part of what's anchoring her. So when a premium brand panics and starts deep discounting, that's not reassuring her. It's shaking her up. It's telling her the ground that you were standing on isn't actually ground. And so she doesn't feel taken care of. She feels that her brand is wobbling, which means part of her own identity is wobbling. And so she starts shopping around and looking for a brand that still feels like something solid to stand on. This is why holding your prices, holding your positioning, and leaning harder into what makes you genuinely you is the right move in an economic downturn, especially if your customer is that values-driven buyer. You would be doing her a disservice by being the one thing in her life that isn't flinching. Now, let me bring this back to actual numbers because theory is lovely, but I run an agency and I run my own ecom brand, and so I like evidence. Our client base, pretty much across the board, is up year on year right now, some of them really significantly. And I want to give you one very specific example. I'm going to anonymize it, obviously, because I'm not going to identify anyone in this kind of scenario, but this is such an illustrative case study, probably one of the best that I've seen this year. One of our retailer clients, she is in a parenting category. I won't be more specific about that. She's up 32% year on year. 32% in this market. Let that sink in for just a minute. She stocks thousands of SKUs from hundreds of brands, ranging from really big, well-known names to emerging and niche ones. She offers a personalization service. She's built genuine depth of expertise in her category, and she's really known for it. She runs the occasional small promotion, but nothing like the scale or frequency of most of her competitors, or even of most of her suppliers, to be honest. She has not entered the site-wide sale Olympics. She has simply held her ground with difficulty at times. It's very difficult to hold your ground when an entire cohort, of in a particular product category is going the other direction. But anyway, she's held her ground, poured her energy into the unglamorous work of service and curation and customer relationships, and trusted that her customer would continue to buy because the proposition is genuinely valuable. And she has been rewarded, like I said, with 32% year-on-year growth. Now, here's the really interesting part of this particular case study. One of the major brands that she stocks, and again, I'm not going to name them because this would be naming and shaming, and my client wouldn't want me to. And honestly, this isn't about, pointing fingers anyway. This particular brand that our client stocks has done almost the exact opposite. Well, exactly the opposite, in fact, over the last couple of years. Their new product launches have become progressively less and less successful, not just, well, I assume for the brand because they keep leaning more heavily into this kind of discounting strategy. But for our client, every time, this brand drops a new collection, everybody who stocks the brand has to be doing a product launch, of course. But each time it's become less successful. Sales are softer on launch, soft again on the next one, soft again on the one after that. And in parallel, that same brand has become way more promotional in their direct to consumer marketing and advertising. They are heavily discounting, even on new drops, aggressive clearance sale events, more and more frequent, increasingly desperate feeling email campaigns. And, that dynamic is pretty obvious once you name it. If you start discounting your new product launches, you just teach your most valuable customer, the one who buys the second the new collection drops because she's emotionally invested in your brand, that she's the mug for not waiting. Every subsequent launch after that, she waits a little longer because she's learned the discount is coming. By the time you're running clearance events at 70 or 80% off a couple of times a year, you've trained every customer you have to delay their purchase as long as possible. And the launch signal that you used to be able to read, that early buyer enthusiasm that, told you we've got a hit, is absolutely gone. It's dead, it's muted because nobody's in a hurry anymore. So here you have a retailer and a brand operating in exactly the same category, exactly the same economy, exactly the same consumer pressure, literally the exact same product. One is holding the line, one is discounting aggressively, and diametrically opposed, strategies, but also diametrically opposite outcomes. If you are a retailer and you've got suppliers actively undercutting you on price, you know how hard that is to experience. But this is what I mean when I say the theory is proving itself in real numbers, because the retailer trusted that her premium customer wanted to be anchored, not bargained at, is up 32%. But the brand that panicked and kept reaching for the discount lever is watching its launches fade. Same market, same economy, opposite strategy, opposite outcome. So, what are the winners actually doing right now? Because I don't want to leave you with the impression that it's just don't discount, because that's not enough direction, really. Not discounting is a defensive posture anyway, and what's actually generating the growth is the offensive posture underneath it. Before I walk you through that, kind of specific tactical foundations we see across our client base, I want to name something that I see trip brand owners up constantly, because if I skip this, everything else I'm about to say won't actually work for you. Most of the brand owners that I talk to already have the foundational marketing tactics in place. The product pages are there, the email flows are running, they're posting on socials, they've got a content calendar, a keyword list that they're trying to optimize for every now and again, and a plan for what to publish and when. On paper, tactically, they're doing all the things, and yet they're still stuck and they don't understand why none of it's working, especially if it used to work and now it's suddenly not working. But the bit nobody tells them politely, I'm going to tell you right now. Most of the time, the reason it's not working isn't that the foundations are missing, it's just that the foundations are boring and the messaging is off. The product page is technically fine, the email flows are technically well structured, the Instagram post is technically on brand, but none of it actually stops a scroll, shifts a mood, or makes a real person feel anything at all. Now, if you've been a listener to this show for a while, you might remember an episode I did, I reckon it was fourth quarter last year sometime, on brand storytelling that stops the scroll. And this is where that comes roaring back in, because tactics without a point of view are just noise. Beautifully structured noise sometimes, but technically optimized noise often. But it's still noise either way. And the algorithm knows it. And more importantly, your customer knows it. The brands that are quietly up year on year right now are not technically more skilled necessarily than anyone else. Their tactical execution is often not really any better. What they do have is something sitting underneath all of the tactics that most of the market is missing, and that is a voice, a genuine point of view, a story that belongs to them and to no one else. Copy that sounds like a human wrote it, not a template. Content that has some humanity and some soul and some emotion in it, not just a scheduling tool behind it. This is the piece that so many brand owners miss because it can't be solved with an app or a plugin or an AI tool or a new VA who knows how to navigate around Klaviyo. You have to actually have something to say. You have to have done the work of figuring out what your brand believes, what it stands against, what it finds funny, what it refuses to do, and, all the rest of that storytelling that comes into a really engaging, recognizable brand that stands out. And then I think this is probably the hard bit. You have to have the nerve to actually say all of that out loud in your marketing instead of hiding behind maybe, the more polished or neutral or inoffensive copy that could pretty much belong to any brand in your category. So before I mention the tactical foundations that you absolutely do need to have in place right now to survive and thrive in this kind of economy, I really want you to hear this. If the storytelling isn't there for you, the tactics aren't going to save you. A beautifully structured product page in really beige corporate speak still won't convert the identity-driven buyer who's been, we've been talking about, well, not just in this episode, but across, all of our episodes really. A perfectly segmented email flow sent in a voice that's indistinguishable from 20 other brands in her inbox still won't get opened. Polish doesn't beat voice, not for the customer that we want as premium brand owners. All right, so with that underneath everything, a voice, a point of view, a story that actually belongs to your brand, now we can talk about the tactical foundations that let that story do its work. Across our client base, there are some common threads, so I'll just share a few of them here and now. First, they are investing in what I would call the foundational layer. And that means your product page is actually converting the traffic you're already paying to bring in. Your email flows are actually doing the work of nurturing every person who lands on your email list into a paying customer and then a repeat customer. Your content doing more than just showing off your latest products, actually educating, connecting, entertaining, positioning you as someone who understands the space deeply. If you're pouring ad spend into a store with a product page that isn't converting properly, you are pretty much just lighting your money on fire, and no sale is going to fix that effectively. Second, super important, they're doing the customer intelligence work. They are actually talking to their customers. They're running real surveys. Not that we typically use the word survey when we're speaking to customers because that sounds a little bit market researchy, telemarketery, right? But they're asking the questions that surface what their specific customer cares about, what language she reaches for, what objections she has, what aspirations she's actually buying into. And then they're using that intelligence to write things like ad creative that speaks to her, product page copy that resonates with her, and content that lands because it's drawn from her actual reality rather than their assumptions about her. And third, they're investing in organic discovery. This might matter now more than ever because paid advertising is harder and more expensive than it's ever been. I mean, we are so far long gone from the kind of paid advertising environment where, 7 years ago, it was like fishing in a barrel. It was so easy and so profitable to just run paid traffic that, why would you bother spending all of the time and the effort to chase after organic search discovery or, really building your own audiences? Because you sort of didn't really need to, but now we have to if we want to run a profitable brand. So the successful brands are building up a presence across the various different platforms, whether it's Google or AI platforms like ChatGPT and Perplexity, also social search as well, because the way that social media operates now contributes to that organic discovery process. So the successful brands right now are creating content that gets found by new people, not just content that performs to their existing audience. So they're working to build a layer of trust infrastructure that helps their paid campaigns and also reduces their reliance on paid traffic over time. And fourth, I do think this is probably the bit that's maybe the most emotionally taxing, but I do want to acknowledge it properly. They're holding their nerve. They're watching competitors discount. They're watching competitors run more aggressive sales calendars. They're watching their own team, possibly even their own family, ask, are we sure we shouldn't be doing something similar? And they're steadily, quietly saying no. And that kind of restraint is genuinely hard. It's the hardest part, I think, of this whole strategy. It's the bit that nobody really talks about, certainly not on podcasts like this in the marketing space. How much emotional regulation it can take to hold the line when everyone else is running in the opposite direction. If that's you right now, I just want to say, I see you. You are not imagining how tiring it is. But I do believe that you're making the right call, even if it is still exhausting. And, it's not the easiest thing in the world to, particularly if you have been maybe a little bit guilty of going down the more frequent, deeper discount promotional route and you are trying to turn around and do things differently, that's hard. But both of these things can be absolutely true at the same time. It can be hard and it can still be the right thing to do. Let me bring this all together before we close out for this episode. The Australian e-commerce landscape right now is dividing into two groups. The brands competing on price who are all converging on the same desperate feeling, margin eroding, customer training to wait discount spiral. And the brands competing on something else entirely, on identity, on values, on experience, on expertise, on service, who are quietly holding their prices and growing. The middle ground is the dangerous place. A premium brand that discounts like a value brand loses both customers. They are the identity buyer who feels betrayed and the price buyer who still can't afford it. Worst of both worlds. The economy is not the culprit killing premium brands at the moment. Mimicry is. And the cost of living crisis also isn't killing premium brands, but panic is. And the way through this year for a brand like yours, if you are a listener to this show, you would be a premium brand, is to do less of what the market is doing and more of the work that the market isn't doing. The foundational work, the customer intelligence work, the organic discovery, the identity level positioning, the stuff that's going to really compound. Now, if you're listening to this and you are the founder who's been quietly holding the line while the whole market is losing its head, and you'd like a proper strategist in your corner to help you architect the next chapter of your growth without panicking or discounting, I'd love to chat. You can go ahead and book in an e-commerce growth strategy session with us. Just head to productpreneurmarketing.com and you'll find the Let's Talk link in the top menu. We will also put the link in the show notes for this episode. No sales panic required, just some strategic, considered, evidence-based growth planning for premium brands that refuse to race to the bottom. Thank you again for spending time with me today. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you either leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform of choice or send it to another founder who really needs to hear this message. That's it for me for this week, though. I'm Kath Langman. This has been the Brand Marketing Show, and I look forward to being in your ears again this time next week. Bye for now.